Okay, so we are, I think, on the last page now. And I've just remembered that we did not make the landing page or the sign up pages, but we are on the last page for the dashboard. And this is basically the messages page. And just to recap, in the last video, we built out the notifications page where we tested out that our notifications are actually working. And when you don't have any new notification, you can see that the badge disappears, right? So now we're just going to go ahead and jump into the messages, and we should get a 404 page, which you can begin fixing right away. So inside dashboard right here, we're going to create a new file called messages/page.tsx, which is going to create the messages path or the folder, and then the file called page.tsx, which we're going to mark immediately as use client because we're going to be using quite a number of hooks inside here. So first of all, we want to import use state and use effect and use ref, and then we're going to import use query and use mutation, and then we're going to import use user, and we're also going to import import use search params from next navigation, and then import the API, and then import the button, and then import the card and card content and card header and card title, just like that, and then import the input, and then import the avatar from components UI avatar, and then import the avatar image and avatar fallback, and then we can import the badge from components UI badge, and then we need to import the message circle icon and the send icon, the user icon, and the download icon, and then we need to import the toast method from Sona, just like that, and those are all our imports. And then we can begin building up the page. We should now have a 404 page right here. There we go. So that is okay, because this has happened because it has detected that we have created the page, but it is not getting a default export. So don't worry about that. That is okay. So export default function messages page, just like that. So first of all, we want to destructure the user. So const user is equal to use user, and then const search params is equal to use search params. Now we have not used this hook before, so what it basically does is that just like in a dynamic page such as like the ID, we were getting the ID using use params, and I think I should be able to demonstrate this better. So let me see if I can get a good demonstration. So where is it? Yeah, this should work. So if I click on view application right here, you can see that in order to get this part of the URL, we were using a hook called use params. But the difference with use search params is if we go ahead and let me search for messages application, just so that I can find where we had such a thing, we were creating a route like this one right here. So dashboard and then / messages and then application. So we cannot use params to get this part of the what's it called, the URL, but we can use search params because these are considered search parameters. So using search params, if we are navigating from the notifications page, for example, if we get a message and we click on this button from the notifications page, then use search params is going to detect this part, and then the actual dynamic route that you want is this one right here, which we are going to be using to display the data to the user. I hope that makes sense. Next, we want to get the application ID. So const application ID is equal to search params, which we are getting on top, dot get, and then pass in the application. Now, why is that? Because the part of the search params that we want is this one right here. So getting the ID. And how do we know that that is the part that we want? We are getting everything from the application, and the application is this part right here. Okay, let's continue building it out. Next, we're going to set up some state values. So const selected application and set selected application is equal to use state, use state, and then pass in the application ID, which we have on top, and then const by typing new message and set new message. This is equal to use state. By default, it is going to be an empty string, and then const is loading, set is loading. By default, use state, it is going to be false, and then const messages and ref, so the end of all the messages, use ref, and by default it is going to be now. Now we need to go ahead and get the current user, which you have done on top. I don't want to type it again, so let's just copy this, copy and paste it there to get the current user. And then const applications, so we can go into the applications page. We need to get the applications, which we don't have. Let's just type it out. So const applications is equal to use query, and then pass in api.applications.get applications by applicant. So that's how you get the applications of the applicant. This checks for the current user !_id. If that is true, then it passes in the applicant ID as current user !_id. Otherwise, we skip the query. Okay, let's switch back to that tab. Let's close the sidebar, and then const owner applications is equal to use query. We're going to pass in api.applications.get applications by owner. This checks for the current user !_id. If that is true, then passes in the application ID, not applicant now. So application ID, and what am I doing? This should not say application, this is owner, so owner ID. Almost confused myself right there. So this passes in the current user !_id. Otherwise, we skip the query. And then const messages is equal to use query api.messages.get messages by application. Now once again, we don't have this, so this is going to be checking for the selected application. If it is true, then we're going to pass in the application ID as selected application. Otherwise, we're going to skip the query. Just like that. Now this one is going to be populated right here, as you can see. So we're getting the application ID from this dynamic value from the search params, and then populating our use state, so that now we can use it here to get the actual ID from convex. And then let's see, next we need to get or rather to send message. So const send message is equal to use mutation, and then passing api.messages.send message. Once again, we don't have it. And then const all applications is equal to an array where we're going to spread in and open this up. Come on, all the applications are spreading all the applications, or an empty array, and then dot filter, and then for every application that you get back, then check the application.status and check if it has been equal to accepted, and then comma, spread out once again, open this up, the owner applications, or an empty array, and then dot filter once again for every application that you get back, check for the application status being equal to accepted, just like that. And then below this should be a comma, not a semicolon. And then below this, we want to have our use effect. So the use effect is going to be as follows: if application ID is true and there is no selected application, then we're going to say set selected application into the application ID. So, and then the dependency array here is going to be application ID and selected application, so that if any of them change, then the use effect reruns. And then we're going to have another use effect here where we're going to be checking for messages and ref dot current dot scroll into view. So if we are on the last message that we want to scroll into view, or if we are not on the last message, we want to scroll into view. And the behavior here, behavior behavior is going to be smooth, just like that. And then this depends on the messages that we have. And then const handle send message. This is going to be an asynchronous function accessing the event of e, where we are first going to say e.prevent default, prevent default, and then we want to check if there is no new message dot trim. So trim takes away the last space in case there's a space, and if there are no selected applications, or if there's no current user, then simply return. Otherwise, we're going to say const application is equal to all applications dot find, and then find the one application and return it. So get the application dot underscore ID, which is triple equal to the selected application, like so. And then if there is no application, then simply return like so. And then we want to get the receiver ID. So const receiver ID is equal to application dot applicant ID is triple equal to the current user dot underscore ID. If that is true, then the receiver ID is application dot owner ID. Otherwise, the application dot applicant ID application dot applicant ID, like so. And then we're going to say set is loading to true, so that now we can have our try catch block to send the actual message in convex. So let's paste this out. So for the try, we're simply going to say await send message. Open this up. This takes in the application ID as selected application. It takes in the sender ID as current user dot underscore ID, and then takes in the receiver ID as well, and then takes in the content as new message. So when you type it in, dot trim, so that it removes the last space if you have it a space by default, or by accident rather. And then set new message, so reset it. Once you send a message, then you want to reset the input. And then for the catch console dot error, and then pass in error sending message, then attach the error at the end of it. And then toast dot error is going to say failed to send message. And then for our finally block, we're going to say set is loading to false, just like that. Fantastic. Now below this, we're going to say if there is no current user. So if there is no current user, then simply return our loading spinner. So loading spinner, just like that. And then we can finally begin to build out our actual return. So let's jump into notification right here and copy this div. So we're going to copy which div? I think this one. So copy this, and then here we're going to return a div with a class name of padding all round of 6, and then paste this in. But now this is not going to say notifications, it's going to say messages. And then the text here is going to say communicate with other users about adoptions. Now below this div, we're going to have another div. So we're going to return a div with a class name of grid and h-screen, and then grid-columns-1, gap of 6, and then on large screens, grid-columns-4. And then inside this, we're going to show the applications list. So you're going to have the card component here with a class name of large screens call-span-1. Close it out, and then card header, and then card title with a class name of flex and items-center. And then the card title is going to show the message circle icon with a class name of margin right of 2 and size-5. Close it out. And then this is going to say conversations, just like that. And then below card header, we're going to have card content. Card content is going to have a class name of padding all round of 0, 0. And then inside card content, we're going to have a div with a class name of max height -96, and then space on the space on the y of 2, and then overflow on the y of auto, so that it introduces a scroll bar once the maximum height is reached. And then inside this, we want to map over all applications. So all applications dot length is greater than 0. If that is true, then we're going to do something, and then if it is false, we're also going to do something. But if it is true, then we want to say all applications dot map, and then for every application that we get back, then we want to go ahead and return a button here, the HTML button with the key of application dot underscore ID. And then on click, we're going to call our inline function here called set selected application, and passing the application dot underscore ID, just like that. And then the class name for this is going to be dynamic. So let's open this up and pass in our backticks. So this is going to say width dash full, and then border dash bottom, and then padding all around of 4, and then text dash left, and then transition dash colors, and then on hover bg gray dash 50, and then $ curly bracket. We want to check if the selected application is triple equal to the application dot underscore ID. If that is true, then we want to apply a class name of border orange dash 200 and bg orange dash 50. And otherwise, we don't want to apply any class names. So probably even a better way for this is probably just to have this as double ampersand, and that should be okay. And then close this out, and then close out the button. Okay, what am I doing wrong? Oh, that's the wrong thing. Okay, that's the wrong place. That should be here. There we go. Now inside the button, we're going to have a div with a class name flex, and the items as center, and then space on the x of 3, space on the x of 3. So, and then we're going to have the avatar component. This is going to have a class name of size dash 8. Close it out, and then we're going to have avatar fallback. Avatar fallback is going to be showing the user icon with a class name of size dash 4. Close it out. Below the avatar, we're going to have a div with a class name of main width dash 0, and then flex dash 1. And then inside this div, we're going to have a paragraph with a class name of truncate, and then text dash sm, and then font dash medium. And then inside this paragraph, we're going to say application question mark dot owner ID. Give me the drop down. Okay, question mark dot name. And then below this paragraph, we're going to have another paragraph with a class name of text dash extra small and text dash gray dash 500. And then inside this, we want to check for the application dot applicant ID is triple equal to the current user dot underscore ID. If that is true, then we're going to say your application. Otherwise, we're going to say application received, just like that. And then we're going to go below this div. We're going to have a badge here with a variant of secondary and a class name of text dash extra small. Close it out. And then this is going to say the application dot status, just like that. And then for our else statement here, we're going to return a div with a class name of padding all around of 4, text dash center, and then text dash gray dash 500. And then inside this div, we're going to have message circle, like so. Close it out. Inside message circle, we're going to have a class name of mx dash auto, and then margin on the bottom of 2, and size of 8, and text gray dash 400. Close it out. And then below this, we're going to have a paragraph with a class name of text dash sm, which is going to say no conversations yet. Fantastic. And now below this card, we're going to have another card which is actually going to show the messages, just like that. So we're going to create a card here with a class name of on large screens column dash span dash 2. Close it out. And then we want to check if selected application is true. If it is true, we're going to turn a fragment here, and then if it is not true, we're going to do something else. So inside this fragment, we're going to show the card header. The card header is going to have a class name of border dash bottom. And then inside the card header, we're going to go ahead and show a div with a class name of flex and items dash center and justify dash between. And then we're going to have the card title. The card title is going to say adoption discussion. discussion. And then below the card title, we're going to have a button here with a variant. Variant is equal to outline, and then the size is equal to small. And then this is going to be showing the download icon. So download, and then the class name here is going to say margin right of 2, and then size -4, and then close it out. Close it out. And then the text is going to say download PDF. So in this case, I did not implement this because it was also hard and I couldn't get it to work. I wanted to upload a PDF which would have like an adoption application kind of form, so that when you click on this, you download that form. So that is the intention for this, but I could not get it to work. Now we're going to go below the card header. We're going to have card content. Card content is going to have a class name of flex and height -full, and then flex -column, and then padding all around of 0. Close it out. And then now we're going to have our messages list. What's that? We're going to have a messages list. So messages list. So below this, we're going to have a div with a class name of max height -96, and then flex -1 and space on the y of 4, and overflow -y -auto, and then padding all around of 4. And then inside this div, we want to check if messages exists and the messages.length is greater than 0. If that is true, we want to do something, and if it is false, we also want to do something. So for the true part, we want to say messages.map, and then for every message that we get back, then we're going to go ahead and return a div with a key of message._id, and then a class name here which is going to be dynamic, so flex, and then $curly bracket. We want to check if the message.sender ID is triple equal to the current user._id. If that is true, then we want to justify -end, and then if it is false, then we want to justify -start. So basically, it's going to align your messages to the right and then align the other person's messages to the left. And then let's close this out, close out that div. And then now within this div, we're going to have another div, and this other div is also going to have some dynamic class names. So curly brackets, and then open that up. Max width -extra small, rounded -large, rounded -large, padding on the x of 4, padding on the y of 2. On large screens, max width -md, and then $curly bracket. We want to check for message.sender ID is triple equal to the current user._id. If that is true, then we want to apply bg-orange-range-500, and then text-white. And then if it is false, then we want to apply bg-gray-100 and text-gray-900. So basically, if you are the owner of the messages, then bg-orange. If you are not the owner, then bg-gray. Now inside this div, we're going to have a paragraph here with the class name of text-sm, and this is going to say message.content. And then below this paragraph, we're going to have another paragraph which is going to have some dynamic class names. So paragraph, class name, open this up, and we're going to say margin top of 1, and then text-extra small, and then $curly bracket, message.sender ID is triple equal to the current user._id. If that is true, text orange-100, not 500, and otherwise text gray-500. And then inside this, we're simply going to go ahead and show new date, and then pass in message.created at, and then .to local date, local time string. This should show the time, not the date. Time string like so. Now for our else statement right here, we're going to go ahead and return a div with a class name of padding on the y of 8, and then text-center, and then text gray-500. And then inside this div, we're going to show the message circle icon. So message circle. And did we create this somewhere else so that we can just copy paste it? I think this one. You can copy this, paste it on the bottom right here. So message circle. The class names are the same, but now the paragraph is going to say no messages yet. Start the conversation. Exclamation. Now let's remove the text sm from here. We don't need it right there. And then let's see which error do we have. We have an error where? Why? This is the button, right? Do we have the closing button? Oh, it's right here. But what is this? What is this? Oops. That's an issue. And oh, you know what? It's because this should not be here. That should not be there. That's better. So no messages yet. And then now, let's save this so that it formats properly. And before we miss it, we need to go below this div right here. We're going to have a div which is going to be a ref for the messages end ref. And remember that the messages end ref is basically just to smooth scroll you to the latest message. And then now we're going to go below this. We are going to build the message input. Now probably we should have an error on the screen. If we're on the messages page, we should get an error because we don't have the convex functions. Now for the messages input, we're going to have a div with a class name of border -top, and then padding all around of 4, and this should be 4. And I do realize that I said in a previous video that it doesn't make sense for us to build the entire UI first without having the convex functions, but surprisingly this is working. I did not expect it to work. But what I wanted to say is that particularly for this, I wanted to build out the UI first and then just like show everything at once as if like a surprise. So let's see. So no conversations yet. And then now we need to build out the messages UI. So actually, in order to test this out, then we need to have an application that has been accepted. So let's go into applications here. And then on the received applications, let's say view details and then accept application. Oh no, we did not test this out. What is this? .pat. Oh, I misspelled that. So applications, you probably caught that. So pat, this should have an H, so patch. Save that. And then as it is reloading, let's continue building out our messages input. So right here, we're going to have a form which is going to be calling an onSubmit called handle send message. Close it out. The class name for this is going to say flex and then space on the x of 2. And this function exists, right? Does it? Handle send message. Okay, there we go. It wasn't highlighting. I was wondering whether we created it. So yesterday we're going to have an input. The value for this input is going to be the new message. And then on change, we're going to be calling e, where we're going to say set new message into e.target.value. Just like that. The placeholder is going to say type your message ... and then the disabled state is going to be dependent on the is loading, just like that. Close it out. Below this, we're going to have the button with a type of submit so that it triggers the onSubmit event on the form. The disabled state for this button is going to be dependent on is loading, or if there is no is loading, or if there is no new message .trim, like so, and then close it out. And then inside this button, we're going to have the send icon, which is going to have a class name of size-4, and close it out. And that should be the entire thing. And now we just need to go and build out this last part, which is very simple. We're going to return card content. The card content is going to have a class name of flex and height-full. And you know what? We have done it before. So message circle, let me just find where it is. So you can just copy paste it. Is it somewhere? There's a class that I added height-full somewhere. Where is it? Okay, that's not it. But we should have an H3 somewhere. I'm so determined to copy this until I don't want to type it out. Anyway, let's just type it out. So height-full, and then items.center, and then justify-center. Inside card content, we're going to have a div with a class name of text-center, and then text gray-500. Inside this, we're going to have message circle. This one is going to have a class name of mxauto and margin bottom of 4, and then size-16 and text gray-400. And then below this, we're going to have an h3 with a class name of margin bottom of 2, text dash large and font dash semi bold, and then the text is going to say select conversation. Below the H3, we're going to have a paragraph which is going to say choose a conversation from the left to start messaging, just like that. And we should now be able to save that. And let's try to accept this application again. Accept. There we go. So that you can see now the button changes to start conversation. And if you look at the bottom left, you can see that we now have search parameters. So when I click on this, it should navigate us into the messages page and then get the parameters and show us the exact message. And this is taking quite a long time to load. It's usually not this slow. And you can see some tags that we don't test out, but you can see some tags are working here. Start conversation, come on, open up. And you can see right here, this is the search params. Very, very nice. And we have an issue here because we don't have this what's it called? This function. So let's go ahead and create that function because I forgot about them. So inside convex, and then inside here, we don't have the messages. So create a new file here called messages.js, and then we're going to import v from convex values. We're going to import the mutation and then import the query as well. And then the first, oops, not internal query. And then the first function that we need to create is called send message. So export const send message. This is going to be called a mutation. Takes in some arguments here, so it takes in the application ID as v.id coming from the adoption applications table, and then takes in the sender ID as v.id coming from the users table, and then takes in the receiver ID as v.id coming from the users table as well, and then takes in the content as v.string. Now we're going to have a handler here. So handler is an asynchronous function taking the context and the arguments here, where we're simply going to go ahead and say return await context.db.insert because we're creating something in the database. So insert into the messages table. And what do we want to insert? We want to insert everything that is already in the arguments and then have the created at date as date.now, just like that. And then once you do that, this is the comma. The second function that you need to create is called export const get messages by application, which is basically the one that is giving us the error here. And then this is going to be equal to a query. Open this up, passing the arguments as application ID from v.id from the adoption applications table. This is hard for me to write, I don't know why. So adoption applications table, and then for the handler function here, asynchronous context arguments. And we're going to go ahead and say return await context.db.query, and we're querying the messages table. We're querying it with index of by application, and then passing our callback function here, query.equals, and check the application ID compared to the arguments.application ID that we have, and then dot order them in descending order, and then dot collect to get all the messages by application. We can save that and then wait for our application to reload. Okay, so this was not yet reset. Let's Control J. Is convex working? Is convex working? It is. So let's save that. This should prepare the convex functions. Okay, there we go. So that now we should have, there we go. So application received. So when I click on this, it opens this up, and then I can type my message. Hello, I wanted to adopt your pet. And when I click on it, it sends it, right? And what I've just seen there, the kind of scroll down is because of the messages endref which we created. So messages endref, which is somewhere at the bottom right here. So that's because of this div. And so you can remove it if you want. It was just a preference of mine. And something is wrong. Something is wrong with this height. Anyway, let's go ahead and just test this out. So I want to adopt your pet. So I have to go ahead and log in with the other account so that we can test this out. So let me go ahead and do that. And there we go. So in the other account, you can see I want to adopt your pet was sent at 15:14, and it is the same right here. So I can say, yeah, sure, we can talk about it so that I can give you the details. Enter, it sends it, and first of all, notice how it is instantaneous. Probably I should place this side by side so that you can see it. And we have not fixed the sidebar. The sidebar still has issues. Okay, but you can see that it is instantaneous. As soon as I send it here, then it also sends it here. But I've just noticed that this message should appear first, so that is probably a problem with the logic in our messages, and it should say ascending order instead of descending. So save that, and you can see that our messages are working. Now, something that I did not do is that I did not show the name of the person here. So I think it's probably better if you show the name of the person as well as the icon. And I'm going to leave that up to you because it is something that I've already done a couple of times in this project. And then now look, I have 2 notifications on this account. So if I click on them, it takes me into here, which says application accepted. First of all, it was new adoption application that this guy wants to adopt the pet that I have. And then application accepted, that this one has been accepted. Very, very nice. So let me close that, and let's see. We already have this built out. And oh, you know what? I know the problem. Where we have hide the screen. That's the problem. So here, instead of hide the screen, let's make it a dynamic value. So let's say calculate and then pass in 100 viewport heights minus what, like 20 RAM. I think that should be okay. Save that, and then that should reload. And as it is loading, I think we have now built out every single page except the landing page and the sign up pages. So let me go ahead and log out so that we can build out the sign up page, the sign in page, and then the landing page as well.